Hi, everybody. This is Tom Riddle from Virtual Intelligence Briefing. Thank you for joining us today for another edition of the VIB Success Series Art and Science webinars. In the past, if you've attended our past sessions, you've known this webinar as the Art and Science of Webinars. We're now expanding that to cover all types of virtual events, one which we'll specifically focus on today. Here's a picture of me. And the information sources for today's webinar are the real-world experiences of our customers with whom we promoted over 1,000 virtual and physical events over the last several years. The topics include feedback, customer feedback on event performance, and then we go and do interviews with the customers that reported the most exceptional results, and those are typically the tips and techniques that we use in these webinars, and they come into really two categories: the art, which are creative out-of-the-box ideas, and the science, which is measuring results and then incrementally optimizing. Our agenda today, we're going to do a brief recap of a couple of important points in last month's the July Art and Science of Webinars key points, and those are Q3 strategy drill downs. And if you were on the webinar last month, you know that there was two Q3 strategies. One was to outperform on webinars you're doing today, and the other was to innovate beyond conventional webinars. And today's topic will be innovation. And we're going to solely focus on one exciting new virtual format that we touched very briefly on in the last webinar, which is lean coffee. And finally, we're going to take a couple of minutes to talk about how to get lean with VIB. And so the July recap, we talked about a couple of eminent challenges that were driven by COVID-19 in one way or another. And so COVID-19 was driving an increase in the number of webinars that are being conducted for a couple of reasons. Prospects at that time in the beginning had more attention availability, and also companies were shifting high dollar amounts of budgets from physical events to virtual events. So as a result, we discussed last time that prospects are getting now 8+ invites a week. So this increased competition for webinar attention share from those prospects are one key point. Another one is webinars are great. We advocate, doing them constantly because they're one of the best sources of leads and lead conversion that our customers have, but they don't address one primary draw from a physical event, which is personal networking. People go to physical conferences in part because of the personal networking opportunity. So we're going to talk about how lean coffee also helps with that today. So strategies, again, we talked about were outperform and then innovate beyond webinars to other virtual formats. So this month we're going to talk about lean coffee, and next month we'll talk about virtual conferences. And so a little bit about lean coffee. At a high level, lean coffee was originally created for agile code development, and these were conducted as physical events and popularized in the Seattle area, and were actually done at Seattle coffee houses, hence the name lean coffee. And lean is an agile term. So what are they? They're collaborative virtual event formats where your targeted personas attend. They vote on topics to discuss, and those topics are ones that are central to you and also interesting to them. And these topics, we're going to show you an example how these topics are seeded, but these are ones that you advocate for and ones that are proposed by them. And so in this meeting, these topics are discussed, and we'll go through the process by which they are. And at the end, everybody gets meeting notes, and action items are distributed to everybody. And these events are moderated by you, or in the future, us and you, and we'll talk about a solution that will be debuting in Q4 to get you started. And so validation, why are we spending a whole webinar talking about lean coffee with you? What gives us the confidence to do that, to spend that amount of time with you? Well, many of you know because we promoted over 1,000 physical and virtual events, kind of in a catbird seat. It puts us in a position to identify emerging trends and determine which ones are going to become successful, so we know at that point which ones to bring to you. And you may know, and everybody knows, that a lot of experimentation is done just to find one thing that could emerge as a next thing. And so we were proud to be selected to promote lean coffee by a $2 billion plus software provider who constantly experiments with new marketing techniques. They've got the budget, the capability, and the sophistication to do that, and they had people in the organization that were using lean coffee physical formats for agile code development. They said, hey, this is great. Let's see if it'll work for marketing, for lead generation as well. The result has been, it was an immediate success, and they're now quadrupling their spend in Q4, which gives them a great competitive advantage. And one of the things we're going to do today is help give that competitive advantage to you as well. And so there's really two value points that I see if you summarize it as far as lean coffee goes. And the first one, and perhaps the most important to everybody because it's so immediate and so tangible, is lean coffee creates high intent leads and rich context around those leads as well. And why is that? Because people are engaging in an enriching experience brought to you, and it creates very strong affinity with your brand. And there's a high level of interest demonstrated by their active participation, which spells intent. And because there's this documentation of what people said, what action items, key points, you develop deep intelligence, deep context of contextualized, high-intent leads that you can follow up with. And so the other point, which I think is huge, is focus group quality intelligence. And you may wonder why I put A+, focus group plus quality intelligence, is that if you look at it, these people are spending an hour, or you're spending an hour with them, learning about their challenges, their preferences, their needs, how they evaluate, and how they decide. And this is different and more than a typical focus group. In a typical focus group, you're coming with a list of questions and you're asking those people what the answers to those questions are. And how do you know that the questions you're asking are the most important, or if those people are ideally suited to answer those questions? This is a more organic approach where you're getting them talking about things that are important to them and important to you, and you can prioritize those things. So it's super high quality intelligence, and that intelligence leads to inputs on product requirements. They're great for persona development because you really get a deep understanding of how these people think. In most of these sessions, one or two new use cases that you may not have thought about arise because these people are constantly experimenting with new, kind of maybe off prescription, so to speak, uses for your solutions and others. Another great point is it gives you the opportunity to identify thought leaders, user group leaders, advisory board members, and people like that as well, because this really falls out from observing these people. And then content, it's great to blog about the highlights when you get a group of experts together. And it's also like a survey as well, because you're getting proof points from them on things that are important to you that can be used for content to develop thought leadership pieces. We're going to talk in a moment about one of the most valuable types of thought leadership that falls out of a lean coffee experience. And so a little bit, now let's get into the nuts and bolts of this a little bit. So who are the participants? There's a moderator that runs the meeting, and that's typically you. It could be us and you, or in the future, we could do that for you. And then there's helpers, members of the team, of your team, typically subject matter experts, and we'll talk a little bit about where they come into play. And the attendees can fall into different classes depending on the objective. For instance, You could put together a group of senior executives, say 15 CIOs, 15 CFOs, 15 COOs or CSOs, where they get together to talk about the macro trends that are shaping the industry and the key challenges. Wow, what an amazing way to put together a thought leadership piece. Directors and managers, if you want to get right to in the trench decision makers, or practitioners, if you're looking for inputs on usability or challenges that they face. The bottom line is, in these meetings, you're typically going to get your desired personas, because these are people that tend to self-select themselves in based on their desire to actively engage in topics. So you're really only getting active participants in a webinar. For instance, you get passive participants. Now, that's great too. But here, you're sort of weeding those people out, because the only people that are going to join this format are people that have something to say and want to actively participate. And these are on topics, again, central to you and of interest to them. And it also allows them, one of the draws is it allows them to network with like-minded people. And so let's drill down a little bit more how this works operationally. So this is an example of a part of a landing page that we drive prospects to, qualified prospects for one of our customers. And there's a couple of key points here. Is one, the session is focusing on trends and challenges. Boy, identifying challenges of your panel is a great thing, because we'll talk a little bit later about follow-up, how you want to map those challenges that are discussed to your pieces of your solution that can address those challenges. And then we mentioned that it's in the same coffee format, and give them a URL where they could learn a little bit about Lean if they're interested in doing so. So we're going to talk about the types of topics. There's a couple of different categories that are discussed. The overall scope is stated here, and then you're going to give examples of some topics. And the reason you put these is, one, is these are topics that are going to be seeded by you. You want to guarantee that these topics are touched upon. And then you also want to ask them about suggestions that they have. And their suggestions are generally going to fall right in line, because it's been conditioned by understanding the scope and seeing some examples of topics from you. This is the other half of that landing page. This is how you collect that information. So you'll give them the ability to check off one or more of the topics that you're proposing, and they also have the ability to submit topics. So another interesting point here is that typically you want 20 to 25 people in the group. That's a manageable amount of people, and it also gives you that kind of critical mass for enough ideas to be shared. Now, what happens with these landing pages is once a session is full, they get something that says that session is sold out, and it automatically shows the landing page for the next session. So this is good for a couple of reasons, and one of them is the scarcity value of it. And so here's how it works. We're going to go through kind of the anatomy and process flow of a typical session. And so on the left, you'll see topics. And these are topics that you have entered. And so they're topics that you suggest, by all means. And then what you do is you take the topics that other people have proposed, you deduplicate them, and you scrub them as well. So you don't include topics that are just crazy out of bounds. And so what people do, the attendees in the session, is they have the ability to vote on these topics. They get 3 votes typically, so they can distribute those votes among 3 topics, 2 topics, or put all 3 of those chips on one topic as well to highly influence if that topic will be discussed. So the topics that are voted up that make that final list, that cutoff, are put in the to be discussed category. And then the number 1 topic, the one that received the most votes, is moved over into the discussing category. And so with that, a timer is set. Now, there's a lot of different approaches to this, and it really depends on the length of your meeting. Typically, we advocate or we recommend a 1-hour session. And so with that, you typically set the timer to 8 minutes. And so there'll be a robust discussion. It requires some skill from the moderator to make sure that one person isn't dominating, but it's actually very easy to do that. And there's really a democratic sense about this because people are democratically deciding what topics to vote on. And so when that 8 minutes expires, you hear that bell ring, and then you have the ability to do a couple of things. One is you can vote to extend the time frame on that topic. You can say you've got no preference, you're ambivalent, or you can vote to end the topic. And the category, the button with the most votes, wins. And so if you extend the topic, you half the amount of the original time to 4 minutes. And if people are ambivalent, you add another 2 minutes to the timer. And so once you've exhausted that process and you're ready to go on to the next one, I should say during the process, you're keeping track of notable points, and you're keeping track of action items that develop from this. And action items are really cool because some of those action items can be things that those people ask you to follow up on, or things that are great concepts that a lot of people want to learn more about, where they'll share those with a community or suggest a follow-up session. So that's a meeting digest, and it goes out to all attendees. So the topics are discussed, the key points in the action item, and this is awesome for you for lead scoring. I'm going to take a moment here to read a few chats here and see if there's things that we want to respond to real time or focus on in the end. And somebody is asking what platform. So there's a few, Christine, so there's a few different platforms, and we're in a final process of evaluating these platforms, and there's a lot of different evaluation criteria. The viability of the company, are they able to integrate with things like Zoom, for instance, what the extent of their features, what the cost is as well. And so we'll be making some recommendations shortly on the platforms to use. So this is the actual screen that's shown during the session. Yara asked that question. And Christina, another great question, I know Christina always asks great questions, is how many people do you feel are most effective? And that's typically 20 to 25. We've got a lot of more great questions here, but I'm going to move on for the because of time. We've got about 11 minutes left. And moving on, so follow-up. And it's really the most important step. What does it matter if it's an awesome session if you're not really getting anything out of it, right? So the beautiful thing is, all attendees, of course, are receiving this information, and you are, and because they're talking about their challenges, and because they have now such high bonding with your brand, because they went through, what some people would almost call, I say this a little bit kiddingly, like a religious experience where everybody's getting together talking about something that they're very passionate about, and it's brought to them by you. They're very inclined to follow up, and because you have those action items and those challenges, it's very easy to set up meetings where you map those findings from the meeting to your solutions. The other thing we've noticed is that attendees have a high willingness to identify other like-minded people to attend these events in the future, and attendees are also very committed and want to help motivated to be that tour guide through the sales process within your company and to be your champion if they're not a key decision maker as well, help you organize that sales process. And so in summary, to my way of thinking and to our customers' way of thinking is that Lean Coffee is the most exciting new virtual engagement development that we've seen in years. There's no exaggeration in that. We've talked about the fact that it's off the charts, customer validation, very high bonding with your brand. And bonding is really important because bonding isn't just something that helps you at that awareness stage in the sales cycle where they say, oh, yeah, I like these people. I'm more inclined to take a meeting with them. But bonding really comes in big time at the decision stage where the rubber meets the road, where they're saying, hey, should I stroke this $100,000 check with you or not? So that bonding helps you through that whole process. And we talked about the fact that these are not only high-intent leads, but they're high contextualization in those leads because you're getting a rich amount of information about that individual. And we talked and showed some examples of the valuable intelligence. And that valuable intelligence really falls out for free. A good focus group can be $25,000. And here, you're really getting that in for free is because these sessions pay for themselves on the lead value themselves. So now, how do you get lean with VIB? How can we help you achieve the level of success that $2 billion plus customer that we talked about is achieving and we're helping them with? So now I think everybody has a feel that we're experts in promoting lean events. And so in Q4, so in addition to promoting these, in Q4 we'll be announcing, it's a little early, this is kind of a sneak peek into a future announcement, we'll be debuting a full lean service solution where we do the promotion, we host it, and we co-moderate that session as well. And this will be good for two types of audiences. People that are sophisticated and can do lean themselves and they just don't have the time to focus on it, and people that are just getting started where we can help you through that process, and then you can determine whether you want to do it yourself, you want us to help you further, or just promote those events for you. So how do we help you really succeed here in promotion is we deliver the right attendees in volumes that matter. And how do we do that? Some of you are probably aware, many of you are probably aware of our Smart Send email program. This is something that our customers use, take advantage of in very high volumes for field events, for virtual events, for content, and call to actions like that. And so we help you extend your reach safely to engage community of 1.2 million, or I should say 2 million plus, practitioners and decision makers across the spectrum from staff to C-level people. It's a very economical solution. It starts at just $1,500. I think a really critical point is you're getting precise targeting from these, just the people that you care about. And so lastly, a little bit more about how this works. It's actually very simple. Some of the best solutions are very simple but not simplistic. And so what do? We take your compelling messages, we promote them to our community, and our community, we're very selective about what we promote to our community, so they're highly receptive to offers from our customers, and we drive them to your existing landing pages. And so that's great. So instead of getting a spreadsheet a week later with a bunch of contacts, you're getting those real times. And so besides the fact that they're registering, if they don't register, you're also getting awareness, and you also have the ability to retarget as well. I think a key point here with Smart Send is we can help you in a pinch. We can help you double the amount of webinar attendees in as little as a week notice, sometimes even 3 or 4 days. So if you're in a pinch, give us a call, but also use us in any case because we help you extend the reach beyond your community. With that, I'd also like to say on behalf of VIB, thank you very much. The next event will be focused on virtual conferences, and you'll be receiving an invite for that soon. So thanks again, everybody.